Before I start this lecture, I would ask you learners to please like, share and subscribe to Med Learning and also hit the bell icon so that you will be notified about our future videos. With that said, let's begin our lecture. Hey there guys, Shami here with another Med Learning video, and today we are going to study about blood, and this is the part of our circulatory system series that we are doing, and probably the last part of this series, and I'm going to move to some other topic after this series. So blood is a essential component of like the circulatory system, and it is the fluid that is present in our blood vessels, and it is very important for our body essentially because it carries oxygen, nutrients, and various other substances within the body. So let us move to our learning objectives, and our learning objectives are going to be what is blood, and what are the characteristics of blood, and what are the functions of blood, and what is the composition of blood. So we are going to keep it very simple today, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about blood, its characteristics, functions, and composition. So if I start my lecture, I want to talk about what is blood. Blood is basically a form of connective tissue, or it is a connective tissue fluid that circulates throughout the body. So, blood is the component of connective tissue that circulates throughout the body. In our previous lectures, we studied about heart. Heart is the organ which pumps blood, and blood is the connective tissue which carries oxygen and various nutrients which are transported throughout the body. So, when we talk about blood, we have to remember that it is a highly specialized form of connective tissue. Okay, so it is a highly specialized form of connective tissue that is present in the blood vessels, and it circulates within the blood vessels. So, other than this, there are other connective tissue called bones, teeth, cartilages, and of course, blood, which is the liquid part of connective tissue. So, there are other parts as well like cartilages, bones, and teeth. So, if I talk about the characteristics of blood, it is the red portion of the fluid. So the red portion of the body fluid is called blood. And why is it red? It is because of hemoglobin. So the slightly alkaline nature of blood is due to its pH. So the pH of blood is slightly alkaline or slightly basic, and it can be between 7.34 to 7.45, and it is also slightly viscous. So if you, for example, check the consistency of blood, then you would realize that it is slightly viscous and it sticks on your fingers. And after some time, when it clots, then it becomes really viscous and it becomes almost like a semi-solid shape. But before that, it is a slightly viscous when it's in its liquid form. So that is the consistency of blood if you talk about it. So if I talk about the volume of blood, a normal adult male or a normal human male, which is about around 70 kg, has around 5.6 liters or 5,600 milliliters of blood. And in females, it is around 4,500 milliliters. So this is the general characteristic of blood. And if I move on, I want to talk a little bit about the functions of blood. So blood has a variety of functions, but has a or a large array of functions that it performs. But if I talk about a few functions, then these are as follows. Number one, it transports nutrients to body tissues. So all of the nutrients that are in our body are basically transported via blood. So blood transports these nutrients. What are these nutrients? Like glucose. Glucose is a major part of our blood. Galactose is a part of our blood. It is a sugar that is consumed by the body. Glucose is a sugar which is consumed by the body. Various amino acids, various proteins. Apart from that, oxygen, which is like essential component of aerobic respiration within our cells, and the waste products which are transported as well. So if I talk about carbon dioxide, if I talk about creatinine, urea, bilirubin, all these waste products are basically transported within the blood. Also the gaseous transport, like I talked about oxygen and carbon dioxide, this happens within blood, and it also regulates our body pH. So our body pH is regulated by generally by blood, because blood has a certain pH, and this pH is helpful in regulating the pH of the whole body. Also it has a defense against infections. It helps us defend against infections. It also helps us regulate the core body temperature, because our blood has a temperature, it has a specific temperature, and in this way it also helps regulate the core body temperature. So if I move to my next slide, I want to talk about the composition of blood. So blood is composed of mainly two parts. Okay, the first part is the liquid portion, and the second part is the solid portion. The liquid portion is also called plasma. Okay, and the solid portion is called corpuscles. So corpuscles are like little grains or little like pieces of material in literal terms, but in our medical terms we call them solid portion of the blood. So these are our red blood cells. Okay, these are our white blood cells. These are our platelets. So if you look at this diagram, or if you look at this picture, you can see the three portions, or the basic these three portions of the blood, that the blood is divided into. Basically there are two portions, but the buffy coat is like the third portion if we classify them further. So the liquid portion is the plasma, the buffy coat is the white blood cells and the platelets, and then the red portion is the red blood cells. And you can see a little smear of blood as well, which is on a slide. And here we have red blood cells, we have platelets, and we have white blood cells. This is like the solid portion of the blood. So if I move to my next slide, I want to talk about plasma. So plasma I talked about in the previous slide is the liquid portion of the blood. So the liquid portion of the blood is basically the majority of blood. It is around 55% of the blood component. And if we talk about the pH of plasma, it is around 7.4, which is again slightly alkaline or slightly basic, and it is yellowish in color. So plasma is again the liquid portion, and mind that if we separate plasma from the solid portion of blood, then it does not clot. So this plasma portion does not clot, while the other portion of the blood, which is like the red blood cells, and these portions make the blood clot. So if you know what I mean, if you can understand that, plasma is like the liquid portion which does not clot, and the other portions clot. So if I move on, I want to talk about the composition of plasma. So plasma is composed further. It has its own composition. What is it composed of? So plasma further consists of around 91 to 92% water. So this is like the major composition of plasma. It is like 91 to 92% water, and it consists of 8 to 9% solutes. So like majority of it is water, but it has a number of solutes inside it as well. So first we have proteins. Proteins are a major components of plasma, and majority of these proteins, or the proteins which are abundant, are albumin, globulin, fibrinogen, and prothrombin. So these two help in clotting. They are very important in the clotting cascade, and these two are the proteins which carry like different substances or glucose. Especially albumin carries glucose, and glucose is we know that glucose is very important for our nutrition of the cells, and is basically the currency that our cells live on. It is the energy of our cells basically. So that is what is the importance of glucose, and albumins carry these glucose. So if I talk about organic substances are general substances which are composed of carbon, and these are glucose, galactose, amino acid, ammonia, ammonium, and creatinine. And some of these are waste products, and some of these are very important for our cells. They are like the energy currency of our cells, and glucose is one of them. So if I move to the third substance, it is the inorganic substance. Inorganic substances are ions and electrolytes, and these are basically the sodiums, the potassiums, the bicarbonates. So uh, we know that sodium plays an important part in cell metabolism and everything, and it has a major part to play in the movement of various ions and electrolytes within the cell. So these two are really important. And bicarbonate is formed from carbon dioxide, and a large amount of carbon dioxide is present in our body in the form of bicarbonate. And other substances like chloride, magnesium, calcium, and ferritin, these are also present, and they also have important roles in like cell metabolism and our other processes within the body. So these are important, and these are all present in plasma. And further, plasma has enzymes, antibodies, proteins, and bilirubin, and also other waste material like I talked about. This is being repeated here, but I have mentioned that creatinine, uric acid, and urea, these are the waste materials that are present in blood. Because again, blood acts as a circulatory fluid, as a fluid that transports all these substances which are vital to our body, and it in the same way transports waste substances as well. So next I want to talk about corpuscles, and this is just a difficult word we can use for red blood cells or for the solid portions of the blood. So the solid portions or the cellular portions of blood, these comprise about 45% of the blood, and they contain three types of cells. Generally, they contain three type of cells. If you look at the picture of like the red blood cells in different cells that are present within the blood, and this is like magnified to around 1000%, and we can see that these red blood cells in these this like little slice or little smear of blood which was magnified by the microscope and observed under a microscope, and we can see the minute details and everything. So if I move to like the next portion, I want to talk about the red blood cells and their composition. So when it comes to basically gender, so in males we have around 5.0 to 5.5 million microliters of blood, and in females we have around 4.5 to 5 million microliters of blood. So this is like 5 to 5.5 million cells in a microliter of blood. So a microliter is like a very small portion of a milliliter, and then it further has like 5 to 5.5 million cells in the blood. So it is a fairly big amount of cells that are present within the blood. So if I move to the next slide, I want to talk about red blood cells. And red blood cells are most important characteristics of blood, and they are basically formed from bone marrow, from red bone marrow, and these are formed in the red bone marrow. They're spherical shape. We can see a picture here as well, and this is a biconcave shape. And if you look closely, it has sort of a donut shape, and it has like a dip in the middle. And this is what a biconcave shape essentially is. And in this way, it has a large surface area, and it can absorb like a huge amount of oxygen molecules and other substances as well. And it has hemoglobin. Actually, hemoglobin is the molecule which has oxygen part molecules inside it. It is a particle, like it is the molecule that has all these oxygen molecules inside it, and in this way it transports oxygen within itself. And mind that it does not have a nucleus, it is non-nucleated. If we talk about the measurement, 7.2 micrometers in diameter, 2.0 micrometers thick, and 1 micrometer thick in the center. So it is it has very little thickness in the center, but in otherwise it has double thickness at the peripheries, and most of the oxygen is being stored at the peripheries as well. So if I move to my next slide quickly, I want to talk about further characteristics of erythrocytes. And erythrocytes, of course, they contain hemoglobin, which is mostly present at the periphery, and they have a normal lifespan of 120 days. So this is the normal lifespan of erythrocytes, and after that they are destroyed by the RES system. And this is essentially the system which consists of monocytes and macrophages, and these are basically responsible for destroying the red blood cells or phagocytizing the red blood cells after their life is spanned. So if we have a decreased amount of red blood cells, this is just a little pathophysiology I'm discussing, but I thought it was interesting for you guys to know. So I'm going to talk about it. So if you have decreased amount of red blood cells, it is called anemia. And if we have increased amount of red blood cells, it is called polycythemia. So these are like contrasting words. They don't have any relation between themselves, but poly essentially means increased, and a means lack of. So you can understand in that terms as well. So if I move to the next slide, I want to talk about the functions of erythrocytes. So we haven't talked about the functions of erythrocytes. I want to talk about that a little bit. So what do they do? First of all, they basically help in the exchange of gases during respiration. Of course, when cells, when we breathe, we inhale carbon dioxide, and we have all these capillaries within our alveoli, and these sacs have, a huge amount of perfusion and huge amount of the capillaries and blood cells within themselves. And this way, during respiration, we exchange these gases. So this is an important function of erythrocytes, that they carry these ions and they carry oxygen molecules and they carry carbon dioxide molecules. And they also maintain the viscosity of blood. Like erythrocytes are very important when it comes to the viscosity of blood. If we have no erythrocytes in the blood, we will just have a yellowish liquid portion which has no ability to transport anything, like no ability to transport oxygen, no ability to carry carbon dioxide. So it would be like practically useless for us. So another important function is that they maintain the ionic balance in the body fluids. So what is the ionic balance? Ionic balance is like the balance of ions within the body fluids. So within the our blood, erythrocytes are very important to maintain the ionic balance, and they maintain this so by taking a large amount of fluids and taking in a large amount of oxygen ions and different ions within themselves, and in this way they maintain the ionic balance. And also what they do is that they play a vital role in water salt exchange. So again, when they are taking these ions, for example, when they are taking sodium, they are also taking in water. So in this way, they can maintain the amount of water and they maintain the amount of sodium that is present in the blood so that it does not get too viscous or does not get too thick. So this is really important when it comes to maintaining the viscosity and maintaining the ionic balance within the blood. So if I move to the next slide, I wanna quickly talk about leukocytes. So leukocytes are essentially what we call in common terms white blood cells. They are also produced within the red bone marrow, and they are spherical in shape, unlike the red blood cells. They are spherical in shape. If you look at this picture, you can see a red blood cell. I think it is essentially a macrophage, and it is surrounded by all these red blood cells. And you can see it is generally a little bit larger than red blood cells, and this is because it has to of course it has the ability to engulf red blood cells, and it has the ability to fight infections, so it is generally larger in size than red blood cells. And also because it has a nucleus inside, it has more organelles as compared to red blood cells, therefore it is a little larger as compared to red blood cells. So these are nucleated cells, which means they have a nucleus. They are white and colorless. You can see clearly that they are colorless. We can see the inside organelles, and the normal value is lot less than red blood cells, essentially because these cells are larger, and they prevent infections, and this is like the police force of the body, and you don't need that much police as the people. So they are around 400 to 11,000 per microliter of blood of leukocytes. And if I talk about a little pathophysiology of these white blood cells, when they have lower quantity, then it is called leukopenia. So penia just means like decreased quantity or less in number, and leuko means cells. Leuko means specifically white blood cells. And if they have increased quantity of cells, then it is called leukocytosis. Cytosis means again in abnormal increased. So cytosis means abnormal increase, and penia means abnormal decrease. So in this way, we can remember the like little abnormality when it comes to these cells. So I hope I've covered all of the contents of this slide. I want to move to the next slide, which is like the classification of leukocytes. So we have generally two classes of leukocytes, and these are the granulocytes and the agranulocytes. I'm going to get into the definitions of these two in the next slide. I'm going to just move into the next slide. And pardon me, this slide says three groups, but there are generally two groups. So there are only two general classifications of leukocytes, granulocytes and agranulocytes. So if I talk about leukocytes, there are like two types of leukocytes, agranulocytes and granulocytes. And these are because caused, these are called granulocytes and agranulocytes because these granular ones have granules inside them. So these are like little molecules or little pieces of like proteins that are present inside these cells, these white blood cells, and that therefore they are called granular. And agranular do not have these molecules or these proteins inside them. And if you further classify them, the agranular sites are classified into the lymphocytes and monocytes, and the granular ones are classified into the basophils, the neutrophils, and the eosinophils. And essentially, neutrophils are the most abundant type of white blood cells. About 60 to 70% of white blood cells are neutrophils. So if I move to my last, I think this is my last slide, I'm going to talk about platelets a little bit. So platelets are the third type of cells that are present in the white blood cells. I don't know if you are keeping count, but these are the third type of cells that are present within the blood. And these are basically called thrombocytes. They are basically formed from megakaryocytes, and these are present in the bone marrow. They do not have a specific shape, and if you look in this picture, you can see that they are, the platelets are surrounded by these white blood cells which have a, biconcave shape. And if you look at the platelets, they do not have a particular shape. Some of them are like granules, little granules, and they are way much smaller than like the red blood cells. And you can see they do not have a specific shape. So this is a characteristic of platelets, that they do not have a specific shape, and they are very small and highly reflective. They don't have as much of a lifespan as other cells of the blood, like thrombocytes, or even like red blood cells or like white blood cells. They have like a lifespan of around 8 to 11 days, and they are again very small. So I didn't talk about their function. What is the function of platelets? Platelets are essential when it comes to the clotting cascade, or when it comes to clotting of blood. If you do not have platelets, or if there is like people have abnormalities when it comes to platelets, so uh, they do not clot blood as quickly as people, normal, healthy people. So when it comes to blood clotting, or when it comes to the clotting cascade, platelets are essential. Like they are the head of this department, like the clotting cascade department, and they are very important when it comes to. I cannot stress it enough that how important they are when it comes to the clotting cascade, or when it comes to clotting of blood. Hey guys, I hope you like this video, and I'm trying to bring new lectures and new videos for you guys as frequently as I can. So if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to Med Learning, and also hit the bell icon so that you will be notified about our future videos. With that said, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.